Hi guys, and welcome to this week's video where I am going to be talking to Michael all about what it's like to be a researcher. And in this series we've obviously done a lot covering roles in scripted, so in kind of like drama, what it's like to be a runner on a TV set or on a film set, whereas this video is more focusing on the unscripted side of TV, so more your factual TV, more like your bargain hunt, your crime watch, your documentaries. So hopefully it'll be of use to those of you wanting to progress as a researcher in unscripted. Today I'm joined by Michael, who is a researcher, and currently I am. What is it you're actually doing?
Yeah, let's start with that. Yeah, so currently I'm a researcher for an American daily show that goes out on NBC streaming service. But next Monday I'm starting as a trainee, like a social media trainee, for a streaming service. So that's exciting. So yeah, currently a researcher, doing a little bit of social media stuff, and then who knows what.
Because obviously in this series I've done a lot of stuff, I think, aiming more towards the scripted side. So it's nice that we're focusing more on the unscripted side of TV, because I mean, as we just spoke about, it's the route I want to go down to. But first question really is, how did you get into TV?
Well, Tom, how did I get into TV? Absolutely lots of networking. So I went to uni in Salford, and like early on, I'm talking about the first few weeks, I was like, oh my God, TV is really hard, much harder than I expected. So I was like, I need to network the hell out of everything. So I went to, there's so much going on in Salford. I'm sure there's so much going on in Cardiff as well, like networking events, RTS events, back to the union events, Creative England events, BBC Academy events. There's so much, I could barely schedule things. There's things happen like every other week. So I used to just go to everything, speak to everyone, not be annoying, but just be just try and chat to people, and just talk to people.
What you're saying there about networking is definitely one of the most important things about this industry.
It's not the most important thing, yeah, I think so.
I remember being in uni and then seeing all your tweets come up of you being at these events, and I was one of these people that actually, I hated going to events, I hated networking, absolutely could not think of anything worse.
No one likes it though. You just have to
absolutely hate it. Just put yourself out into that uncomfortable zone, I suppose, and it will repay you in the long run. You started out as a runner, is that right?
So where I went in, so you have runner, and then you kind of have production secretary / production assistant, which is almost the same level as runner, but almost kind of higher up sometimes depending on the role. So you got runner, and then you've got production assistant or production secretary, then you've got production coordinator, and then you've got production manager, and then you've got line producer, and in between those sometimes you have junior production manager or other ones that go in between, but that's kind of the main, and that's all the logistical planning stuff, which was the stuff that I was doing as production secretary, but that wasn't really the route I wanted to take. I instead wanted to take the editorial route, which goes runner, junior researcher, or sometimes just researcher, assistant producer. So you got this side, which is the logistics, management, logistics, sorting everything out, and then you've got editorial, which is basically story. There is some logistics within editorial as well sometimes, for you might have to book some things or arrange some things, but that's generally, the thing is, the role is different in every job with every company on every show, but that's generally how it tends to be, I found from my experience. But I'm still new, so I'm still trying to get to grips with everything, but that's the way I've kind of experienced it. But yes, I did production secretary stuff, and then I really wanted to be a researcher, and I've made it clear that I really wanted to be a researcher. I mentioned it quite a bit, and then a job came up. I saw them post on Facebook about a job, and I just said to my my line manager, hey, is there any chance I could just have a chat about this? Completely understand if not, because I know that I'm obviously doing this stuff, but I would really like to give them the opportunity. So they gave me a chance to have an interview, and somehow I impressed them. And they took me on board as a researcher, my first researcher job. So that was really amazing.
Being a runner is quite manic in itself, doing all of the jobs that you're tasked to do. What's that transition like from runner to researcher? And then also, what is a researcher really, for anyone that doesn't know?
The thing is, so there is a ton of different types of researcher, and I've worked as a casting researcher and a regular researcher, but there's all sorts of other types of research, like shooting researcher, location researcher, which I've never done, so I don't know too much about, other than that shooting involves you filming and being on set. So yeah, so I mean, so from my experience, it has been more office based than when I was running. But that's not to say that you don't go out on shoots as well. Sometimes you do. I mean, this is, like I say, this is from my experience of however long I've been a researcher for. Like, you could ask from the researcher and I might tell you something totally different, just because the word researcher is so broad. And again, every show, every production, every company is totally different, and you're probably expected to do different things. So, but yeah, generally a researcher is, if you have to kind of sum it up, is about getting kind of the people to be involved in the series and getting their stories, really, amongst other things. But I think that's kind of, generally speaking, that's kind of the main things that you're getting the people, all the locations. You're helping to put together the story, essentially, whether that's the location of where it's going to be shot or like the people, basically. So and obviously you often report to like an assistant producer or a producer right up. I've been on jobs where there's no assistant producer and it's just you and a producer, so that can happen sometimes as well. So yeah, you're generally like, yeah, basically you're helping out the producer with finding all the stuff, but there is quite a bit of responsibility in terms of like, you are tasked to find the people, like that is actually your job. So as a casting researcher, that is the primary focus, is your casting, so you're finding people for a show. So there's 4 different stages that you kind of go through when you're a casting researcher. The first one is outreach, which is just getting the word out as far as possible, whether that's, I mean, obvious things like Facebook, email, but it's a lot of phone bashing. So I mean, phone bashing is what it says in the tin. It's like making lots of phone calls. I mean, like a lot of phone calls. I mean, like hello, like all day, and it can be quite like people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just saying, sometimes, again, depends on the job. It can be like, do you know someone that might be interested in this? Or can you put up a flyer? Or just do some this. Do you know anyone who might be interested? It's just kind of being a bit nosy, really, and just saying, oh, look, we're making this really cool show, and I'm just getting in touch with anyone and everyone, see if they might be able to help. The type of outreach you do depends on the type of series and depends on the team and production. That's the thing. Everything is always different. There's no like set way. So the second stage is kind of like, you should hopefully get people apply by this point. This is if you're doing a factual entertainment show. If you're doing a documentary, you probably don't have an application form. So in factual entertainment, you probably be an application form that you probably go through them, and you call the people up that you think might be interested and try and gauge their story and try and gauge whether or not they're a good character and whether or not they're gonna, be good on telly, sort of thing. Because that's the first, thing, is their story good? Are they going to be good characters? Because that's what you want. You don't want to watch a show with boring people, do you? With documentary, I'd obviously imagine it's quite different, and you're often dealing with perhaps more sensitive issues. So that might be like, as opposed to, hello, let me tell you all this information, can I get your details? It might be like having a more sort of subdued chat about the program and about if they might be interested. Confidentiality is paramount, and duty of care is paramount, and care of contributors is always like the most important thing. Like, you have to make sure you're looking after the people that might be involved in your show. So you have the phone call with them, and then you sort of set up a schedule of time where you tell them more about the show, get all their details, find out their story, what's their reason for wanting to be on the show, what's their background, kind of thing. Then after you've done that, you'll kind of, sometimes you make the decision yourself, sometimes it's with your producer and your team. You might have a chat and you kind of say like, okay, so this is this person, this is their story, they're quite a good character, I think we should Skype them, sort of thing. And your producer might sort of agree, and then you would do a Skype call where you would record it like we're doing now, ask them loads of questions. Normally the questions are sort of pre-arranged. I've done it before where I've written the questions myself because I know what I need to get out of the interview. You basically interview them, and then that gets you as a researcher, or sometimes someone else will then cut that down, and that gets turned into a casting tape, which then gets sent off to the channel, and then the channel basically approve or disapprove someone for the show, basically. So it basically goes outreach, getting the word out there, chatting to contributors on the phone, telling them about the show, scheduling a more detailed chat if you think they're a good character. So doing that chat, getting all the information, getting their story. If you still think they're a really good character and you think they're going to be good for the show, then you would Skype them, interview them over video call, record it, and then you would cut it down into a casting tape, which then gets sent to the channel. The channel says yes or no, and then that's kind of the process. And then from then on, if someone is on the show, you will sometimes be their point of contact up until filming. Yeah, so that's a casting researcher. That's one of the types of researchers. Other types you can be is location researcher, which I've not done, but it seems to be like, you're finding loads of locations. Shooting researcher, going on the shoot with the PD, Very similar to running, actually. I think running on a documentary, I think, would be sort of quite similar to being a shooting researcher, except you'd be shooting. Sometimes you can be a researcher that goes on location and just assists with the equipment, which is very similar to running. The other type of researcher I've done is, again, sort of normal. It was my job title, like currently, is just researcher. But I'm working on a sort of daily American show. And it's kind of like an entertainment-y, newsy type thing. So I'm basically finding entertainment stories, a bit more journalistic, actually. Yeah, so finding entertainment stories, sort of pitching them to our producers and our editors, and then if they say yeah, we'll go ahead, finding the assets for the story, so the photos, the videos, writing the script, and then the presenters obviously read out the script. So yeah, and that's a bit different again.
I suppose really the next question really that would make sense to go to is, what important qualities would you say a researcher should have?
Yes, so a researcher should be a people person, definitely. Should be good at phone bashing. Should be good at like calling people, having chats with people, making people feel comfortable. A researcher should be, I suppose, quite investigative. Should be able to spot a good story, should be able to dig and find things, and it sounds kind of obvious, but should have strong research skills. And they're kind of the main sort of things, really. Loving TV as well is always good, isn't it? Because
I feel like people, if you work in TV and you don't love it, then it's a bit. I think because TV takes such a massive chunk out of your life, you need to love what you do.
I would recommend checking out the Screen Skills website. There's a research section on there that has it all down there for kind of what you do. I mean, I could list off from the top of my head all the stuff, but I think that as I've not got first-hand experience of being a researcher for a sort of UK, being a non-casting researcher, just researcher for a UK show, you're probably best look at Screen Skills in case I give you the wrong info.
Talking about Screen Skills, they're obviously a resource for workshops and all that. I mean, I'm going to be doing a workshop with a guy all about the FS7.
Because that's another thing. Like, everyone should learn to shoot, because like I'm still learning how to shoot, and like I think that if you can do that really helps as well, because everyone needs someone who can operate a camera.
Definitely. I keep seeing lots of jobs that are shooting researcher jobs. Or if it is just researcher, then somewhere in the job description will be like, we desire this. But my question was, what good workshops or traineeships do you know of for people starting out, either as a runner that wants to go on to researcher, good for their CV or something like that?
Like, Michael, why didn't you if I didn't? The Network Edinburgh TV Festival is fantastic. So I'm alumni of the Network that I did in 2019. It was just brilliant. You basically TV festival, it's such a big thing. But yeah, you go down to the festival and you do like you get to see some stuff. I met Louis Theroux. Nearly died. I was like, oh my god, it's Louis Theroux. But the Network's really good. You go down to the festival and you have like workshops with companies that do things with you on different days, and you have great networking parties every night, which is fantastic. And it's so much fun, and like you have a great time. And like I remember like being on the dance floor and like chatting to people and being like, yeah, it's great. But not just partying side, like it is actually a really good scheme, in the daytime. And you do some really great stuff and learn a lot. And afterwards, I'm still in touch with the Network as well. They're really supportive, and you kind of have, they're like, it's a really good thing to have on your CV as well. So there's that. There's the Channel 4 production training scheme, which is really good, I've heard. That kind of gives entry-level people, people who've not done it before, the chance to be a researcher. It's a 12-month contract as well, which is really great. There's that, the BBC production training scheme as well. I've not done these Channel 4, the BBC ones, but I've heard that they're good.
I think it's just gone up as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, possibly, yes. Mama Youth Project as well is another good one. Oh, and then ITV have them as well, ITV training, production training schemes.
Obviously, you do a lot of extracurricular activities outside of work. How would you say doing that helps you be a better?
And I started doing that before I became a researcher, and I find my own guests. I, interview them. I do pre-chats on the phone like you would as a researcher, chat to them, find out more about them, find out about their story. And then I obviously interview them over video call, which, if you were listening earlier, is actually very similar to what you do as a researcher. You find the people, you have a chat, and then you interview them, and then you edit it. And I do all those things for my podcast. So I think that's really, really helpful, doing something like that, or doing what you're doing, Tom, and setting up these, your YouTube interviews as well is going to do you really good favors. It's a little plug. You can find it on any of your favorite podcast platforms. It's called Ways to Improve the World. But yeah, you can have a listen to it. It's like an uplifting one. I'm trying to find ways to make the world a better place, because things aren't great at the minute, are we? So I'm trying to spread a little bit of hope and positivity. So.
People always talk about working class representation on telly, and it's still the place where those conversations are going on, probably where you're seeing yourself, and a TV exec's idea of like a working class drama is often very different from a working class person's idea of what it is. And
my final question really is, what can you tell us about being a researcher, or even about working in TV as a runner, that you wish you knew before being a researcher or working in TV?
Yeah, you asked me this earlier, and I meant to think about it, and then my brain just didn't think about it, so I'm going to have to block it now. What do I wish I'd known? That's a tricky one. I was going to say, like, I wish I'd known how important networking is, but I knew that from the offset. That it was really important. That
I feel like you were doing networking, like. I
was an early adopter, Tom. I was networking before it was cool.
Yeah, you were born and you started networking. Definitely, I think networking is definitely the biggest.
Yeah.
This job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or one of.
Yeah, one of the biggest. I think that I wish I'd known that it was. Maybe I wish I'd known that it was possible. Like that, like it's not some like far off, distant dream that you'll never get to. Like being like the main, being in a main role in a Hollywood film, is probably far off the horizon for most people. But working in TV is doable for everyone, and you're not reflecting the world, and that's what TV is meant to do, right? So
yeah, no, definitely. I like strong believer of that. Like, what's the point in making TV if you're not going to reflect everyone? Because I suppose at the end of the day as well, is if you're reflecting everyone, it makes it more interesting. You're not having the same story told over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree.
Yeah, I suppose I'd just finish by saying, like, these are just like my insights, so don't take this as gospel, or this is how TV is, or like, I am by no means any kind of expert. So a little disclaimer, if like, this is just from my experience, so don't ever think that anything that I've kind of suggested or said is like, this is how it is, like, different, and it varies on the job role and the show and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I hope it's been helpful, and I hope your listeners have enjoyed listening to me waffle on this morning.
I'm not gonna lie, if it's not helped them, it's definitely helped me. So
well, that's good. At least it's helped someone then.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
So I'm grateful for it. Yeah, but thank you for taking part.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it definitely helped me, so I'm really grateful that Michael took time out to talk to me. Please comment down below if you have any questions for either myself or Michael, and we will both get back to you either about this role or any other roles within TV. We'll try our best. I'll also make sure to make another video very soon discussing another role with someone else working in TV and film. Yeah, so make sure you comment down below if you have a particular role you want me to talk about. Make sure to check out all my social media, and I'll see you very soon. Bye.